Welcome to this Omnipress micro-learning session, New Normal, New Opportunities, how turning the annual conference into a year-round learning event checks all the boxes. The meetings industry has been faced with unprecedented challenge, how to deliver value to attendees and sponsors in a virtual environment. But there is a silver lining. In the race to go virtual, we have been forced to create a platform to deliver a year-round conference experience that increases learning, better engages our members, and attracts new audiences. During the next 20 minutes, we're going to present data from our 2020 State of the Conference Industry Report, which reveals why there is a need to extend the conference experience and how meeting planners can use their virtual conference as a springboard to deliver more value to attendees and sponsors. Let's rewind back a few months, which is where this story starts. Earlier in the fall, we conducted our 6th annual survey of 150 association and meeting professionals to understand how the conference and the education delivered at the conference is evolving. Each year, these findings are published in our State of the Conference Industry Report. Now, each year we see an emergence of one overarching theme that is prevalent throughout our report. This year, one of those macro themes is that for associations to be successful, the educational content delivered at the conference would need to do more. What this means is it would need to have a life outside of the conference in order to help associations attract new audiences, engage young professionals, and increase value for existing members. Now again, thinking back just a few short months, what is the value of an in-person conference? For attendees, it's learning and education and creating connections with peers and industry leaders. For the association, the conference is one of the biggest drivers of member engagement. In fact, the in-person conference is sometimes one of the few times associations actually sees its members face-to-face. The in-person conference also helps to maintain or increase the association's industry relevance. And of course, it's a huge driver of non-dues revenue. In our survey, we asked participants to rate both the importance and the effectiveness of their conference in achieving these benefits. What we saw was a significant gap. If you look particularly at the light teal color on this graph, it signifies the extremely category. So what this means is that 40% believe the conference is extremely important in attracting new members, but only 14% thought it was extremely effective. When we look at engaging and retaining existing members, 72% thought it was extremely effective, or extremely important, and 45% thought it was extremely effective. In looking at increasing awareness, 73% felt it was extremely important, but only 36% felt the annual conference was extremely effective. And when we look at how the annual conference helps to increase the relevancy of your organization, 70% versus 38%. So clearly the conference is very important, but there are some untapped opportunities to turn that conference into a growth engine for the organization. In our survey, we also asked questions about the role of young professionals as members and as conference attendees. Now, as you can see on this graph, Generation Z and even millennials are not yet filling the gap being left by baby boomers. So the millennials and the Generation Z you'll see show up more on the left-hand side of the graph in the yellow and orange, whereas baby boomers in general still take up between 40 to 60 or 70% of conference attendance. Part of the reason for this is because a significant percentage of associations still don't have a strategy in place to attract and engage young professionals. Now, there has definitely been some progress made over the past year, but those numbers still aren't as high as we would like them to be. So, how are associations going to fill these gaps? With their educational content. There is a significant opportunity to repurpose the content delivered at a conference to get in front of new prospective members who may not be aware of you, to use this content to demonstrate your value and attract new audiences, to create additional learning opportunities for members after the conference, and to provide additional channels for your sponsors so you can increase the value of their investment. Basically, what this means is that we need to transform this annual event into a year-round learning and engagement strategy. We also asked respondents whether they are currently reusing their conference content for any purpose. Now, we have seen a very recent uptick in responses, which is extremely promising. You'll see just how much this has jumped from 2019 to 2020, with 55% stating yes in 2019 and 72% in 2020. Most respondents, however, are still using this content primarily to market next year's event. What is changed, though, is that this year we have seen a significant increase in the number of respondents who are using this conference content to market the association, not just the conference, which is great. It's a major step in the right direction. And we are also seeing a small increase in the number of respondents who are using it for ongoing learning. This is the most we've seen in any year, and we've been doing this report for 6 years now. But this is also an area that is extremely challenging for association professionals. So they are trying to find new ways to repurpose this content, but have not yet been as successful or aren't doing it on as large of a scale as they could or want to be. And a big part of the reason is because they don't have the tools, the processes, and the platforms in place to be able to do so easily and efficiently, let alone the staff and the resources to do so. So before we move on to part 2, let's quickly recap. So what we've covered is that in-person conferences are extremely valuable to associations. But in order to fully realize this value, session content needs to have a life outside of the conference, which basically means turning an annual event into a year-round strategy. Okay, that's where we were at the beginning of this year, but then came COVID-19. In-person conferences are no longer an option, and many of us are scrambling to figure out how to go virtual, which honestly means about a dozen different things. We're faced with some pretty significant challenges. Namely, how to retain the value of an in-person event when we're delivering it virtually. As meeting professionals, we have to continue to deliver quality programming and provide some sort of peer connections so that we can retain attendees, retain our sponsors, and ultimately maintain our revenue as best we can. Once we take a deep breath and get beyond the initial stress of the situation, what you're seeing is that we are all now being forced to evolve the annual conference in a way that will help to make associations even stronger in the long run. What do I mean by this? How does going virtual mean the annual conference has to fundamentally change? Well, first, we can't expect to do the virtual event in the exact same time frame as a live event. Attendees who are attending the conference from home can't dedicate the same amount of focused time to the content. There are just too many distractions. In fact, we recently wrote a blog article on this very topic that is a real live case study that shows just what happens in a household during a 3-day live event. In addition, you also have attendees that are all in different time zones, so that needs to be taken into consideration. So we're seeing many organizations extending the release of this content over several weeks or even several months. If we're already having to go this far, then it's also a great opportunity to think about developing follow-up sessions and follow-up content that can be delivered virtually as well. You are no longer restricted to cramming all of that value of the event into just a few days. You can spread it out over an entire year. We see many of our customers looking for creative ways to build in virtual peer connections, a number of different ways, from hosting a live virtual happy hour to providing ways for attendees to comment on on-demand presentations and to ask live questions at designated times with the speaker. Again, if you're already having to take it this far for the conference, look for other ways to extend these virtual connections throughout the year. And so much of our conference and sponsor exhibitor packages rely on an in-person experience, from a booth on the expo floor to signage or bag inserts. But there are still plenty of ways for sponsors to connect with our members and even increase the value of their sponsorship dollars by creating new opportunities and extending the time frame of those opportunities. So what does a year-round conference experience potentially look like? Here are just a few examples of what you can do for your attendees. Use these as a starting point to really help generate some new ideas. Now, oftentimes at conferences, we go surface level on a broader topic. So what you can do is take one specific subtopic of a popular session and turn it into an opportunity for deep learning or micro learning in a webinar, in a podcast, or a virtual panel discussion. Peer-to-peer learning is something that association members have told us they want more of. So create a session that allows members to engage with each other through a forum to discuss not just the content they learned at the conference, but how they're applying this learning in their day-to-day. And the great part about this is that it also provides an opportunity to gather additional topic ideas for follow-up content or for additional educational programs, or even to help you modify and improve existing programs. As a double bonus, if you've got some members who appear to be super adopters of a particular skill or practice, invite them to present at a future event, particularly if they fit within the younger professional category. There's no better way to engage them and their circle of peers if other young professionals have the chance to hear from someone who is like them, in addition to hearing from your more seasoned and tenured professionals. Also look to cross-pollinate content across the organization. So take a popular conference session and turn it into a mini or micro learning course, or vice versa. Create a session or a track at your conference that introduces the same topics that are covered in a popular course. And you've got the perfect channel to cross-promote registration for your conference and for your additional educational programs. And with this expanded library of online content, be sure to optimize it for search engines so that it can be picked up by the Google and found by young professionals who rely more on search engines than any other source to find answers and resources. I want to repeat this one again because this is very important. Your younger members rely more on Google than any other source for knowledge and information, which means that your educational content needs to be served up in the search results so that new prospective members can see you as a source of knowledge. The move to virtual can actually open up more meaningful exposure that better aligns with your sponsor's objectives. Provide opportunities to your partners to create and present educational content. This can be distributed as an article or written content in your existing channels like your email, your newsletter, or blog. Or have them create a virtual or live session or webinar. If the content can meet continuing education requirements, it becomes a true win-win-win for your partners, your members, and your team. Now, attendees at your in-person meeting browse the trade show floor, not just looking for the free swag, although some definitely do, but to also get a quick sense of whether what a vendor is offering is actually something they need. So instead of featuring a list of logos on a page, which honestly provides very little value for your sponsors, work with your exhibitors to record a short intro video. Your members can then browse these videos the same way they would browse the show floor. You can also take it a step further and facilitate a quick introduction between your true shoppers, those attendees with real needs, and your exhibitors. Consider sending a survey to your attendees to determine which products or services they're most interested in, and then pair them up with an appropriate vendor or sponsor, setting up 5 to 15-minute virtual meetings. They say we should all be prepared to face a new normal. And honestly, I don't even know what that really means. Will in-person meetings be back in full swing just as they have been? Or will blended meetings become the new normal? Whatever the future holds, it's important to see that today's challenges do present some great opportunities. In the race to go virtual, we are now creating a platform to deliver a year-round conference experience that increases learning, better engages our members, and attracts new audiences. So let's embrace it. This micro-learning session has been brought to you by Omnipress. Omnipress has been working with associations and other organizations for more than 40 years to provide a simpler way to collect, review, schedule, and produce print and digital educational material for conferences, instructor-led training sessions, and member publications. And this includes our online platforms that help associations turn their in-person conference sessions and instructor-led classes into on-demand video content that attendees, members, and learners can access anywhere, anytime. If you're looking for more articles, webinars, and content that discusses the future of member learning and the role of educational content, visit omnipress.com and click on Resources. Thank you for joining us today, and watch for more webinars like these from Omnipress.